depending on where you are in the development cycle, you're likely to be doing different pieces of work. So you may be focusing more upon bugs at one point in feature development. So that might be. So how would you like to structure this, Daniel?
I think if we get out of the session and we have a list of things we want to take a look at, that would be a good first step, like this process, this tool, and maybe
So maybe identify. Maybe identify the key. Do you want to, like, in terms of the different pieces of the process, or do you mean in terms of concerns, like where people think there's issues?
Both.
Yeah. I have one specific I could mention. So I am constantly trying to recruit people to do development for Ubuntu, or to more likely upstream developers to get involved in packaging and like get their libraries or applications into Ubuntu. And one thing that's a big stumbling block, or sort of a weird thing, is if I can talk them into going through all of the excellent tutorial information that's already available, and they upload a package to review, and then someone comes along and says, why don't you put it in Debian first? Like, oh, that's a whole nother. Like, Debian's great, and I personally am working really hard to get involved in Debian and contribute my stuff there. But if we just talk someone into like stepping over that first hurdle, where they're trying to get a package into Ubuntu, we shouldn't ever send them somewhere else. I want to make it a lot easier for them to get their stuff into Ubuntu if that's really effective.
Yeah, if we're going to tell them that, we shouldn't even start them down that road and just send them there.
It seems like that's one of the common themes where people start facing problems. Like, if you think to yourself, okay, I'd like to review a patch. There's different patch systems, and if I want to package for Ubuntu, there's different ways of packaging, right? You know, you've got, and it seems like at every step there's multiple options. And maybe one thing we should be doing is sort of saying, in the classic tradition of Ubuntu, which is saying, make an opinionated, informed choice. Like, there are other options, but this is what you should do.
But that's not a problem anymore with Debian packaging 3.0. It's built in by default with DBKG, so you basically need to use Quilt or not use anything at all.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna make some notes.
Not all packages have migrated though.
Right. But well, we just need to make the effort to migrate all the packages. There's a lot of packages already migrated.
So there's a good tool, that edit patch tool. I'm not sure I wrote it, which just makes it so simple because it works out the patch system and it's a unified way of patching, and that's great. And I think maybe ideas like that and tools like that can really help us.
Yeah.
Similar to what Elliot was just saying, along that same thing, which I think is a process rather than a tool-related thing, is that you get somebody that's interested in packaging. I'm a good example. And like, I have stuff ready to go. I've got a PPA full of 20 different packages that I maintain, and figuring out who to talk to or where it goes and getting anybody to pay attention to me in the mainline system, absolutely impossible. Can't do it. Takes entirely too much. Instead of being asynchronous, like easy to be able to attach to it and detach from it as bandwidth is appropriate. It seems like there's some really like expectations of synchronous syncing time with the process, and that's really hard to get new people in to deal with that. You know, it's a big organizational figuring that out. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's similar to that. Like, once you've figured out how to patch the software and package it, where does it go?
And that's from the perspective of a big upstream that's shipping on like 10 pro platforms, right?
Yeah.
Nigel is actually pointing out that, related to that depending on where we are in the release cycle, we tend to encourage fixes to go upstream or to go in different directions, and this is part of the confusion.
This seems to be like a common theme, is these multiple options. So maybe if we continue going through, maybe if we just spend some time noting down, because I know we're noting these down in Gobby, all these issues, and then maybe look at those issues and see if there's any overriding patterns between those issues.
Actually, this particular issue, I remember when I first joined it, when we were before Debian import freeze, I used to get my fixes sponsored to Ubuntu, and then my sponsor used to ask me, please send this to Debian maintainers so they can include it as well. But I get the package is sponsored to Ubuntu, and then I get a request from a sponsor to actually forward the patch to Debian, or to Upstream, or whatever.
I think maybe what we need to do at a point, and maybe not now, is just work out each of the different things that we do, and then look at the process and the tools that we have. Because I think they're so varied and it's difficult, and I think like the problem with review is not many people understand dead packaging. It's a difficult thing because there's 100 ways to do it as well, and you might be doing something that I don't understand at all. And it's not an easy thing to learn for people trying to review even. It's really the people who really know what they're doing that can review. And I don't know how Debian gets it right. I don't know if anyone's got any insight to how they do it. And then maybe we should look at our criteria and our barrier to entry. And I mean, I know we want quality, so it's that trade-off that we need to maybe look at what we want to do around that.
Yes, but the thing is that if you're already at the point that you can review a package, you must be at the point that you already know who to ask for help. So for example, when I'm reviewing a package and I have found something that I don't really know what's going on, like something really complex in the packaging system, I usually know who to talk to ask him like, I'm reviewing this package and I'm not sure what's going on here. Can you please review it? So me as a sponsor, you should be in the place where you know who to talk to.
And maybe that can be defined actually a bit more structured,
Right.
where and how we can speak to someone who could maybe help us with something.
Is there any way for, and not to talk things off the Launchpad folks, but like merge requests in the Bazaar structure inside of Launchpad are a really great way for a person who has only minor association with projects to, put something up, it goes into a queue, it's integrated with all of the rest of the things, and it's easy to track it. Something like that for managing a similar process inside of Launchpad.
Yeah, that's the plan, but currently, so you can use code reviews for source package branches, but it's actually not really tailored for Ubuntu reviews because code reviews just give you one big blob of it.
Yeah.
Whereas, which will mix upstream strength changes, packaging changes, the actual patches, so it's very hard to review using that UI. We need to do a substantial amount of changes to the code review. We need to, at the UI level, to tailor it to the package to be more useful for package review.
So,
But to be fair, it's not any worse than
it.
yeah.
So specifically, Launchpad builds on top of Bazaar's facilities here. So one of the things we should do, I think, is to be building into BStar Build Dev the ability to do better diffs between package branches, to structure things, split things out, and as we get improvements there, we can push them through to the Launchpad Web UI relatively easily.
So-
for those things we could do to optimize
Yeah.
these different tools and workflows, but I think if we maybe could focus on some of the more fundamental problems, because
Yeah.
for example, so we have a merge proposal system. It's not ideal, but like just yesterday, somebody sent something to it and they got told, could you go and submit this to Debian instead?
That's it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
It's
real.
the same problem.
I'd like to also make sure that we scope this to the 10-10 cycle as well. Like, I'd like us to look at work that's achievable in this cycle, and some of these things would be outside the scope of the cycle.
So I guess all I'm really saying is the Bazaar team and the Launchpad teams are probably going to try and, if they see something that they can do as a low-hanging fruit that doesn't need to be specifically addressed during this
Yeah.
cycle.
It's kind of like
we'll do what
overriding
we can along the way.
things that can be improved, and then cycle-specific things.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we can split up the discussion into tools that we recommend. Like, what's always going to work is you attach a patch to a bug report and submit it to the sponsors somehow. But what always is going to work is a merge proposal, even if you have a new upstream version or you merge something from Debian. So that's always going to work. So maybe we should go and recommend it in the documentation. That's something we're not doing right now.
I think it's also worth looking at this situation from more of a role or a persona perspective, because we have different people who are approaching the project like from upstream or as a prospective packager.
Yeah.
And they have different needs and different expectations for what happens. Like, for example, you were talking about you've got some packages in the PPA, like the technical aspect of actually making a package is that's fine, but then how do you make that transition toward being part of the mainstream? And there's not just using different tools and processes. There's a different mindset to it. There's a difference between I've created this package in my PPA to I'm maintaining this package in Ubuntu. It does become more of a synchronous activity. You're part of the release flow.
Is there?
I think we help people across that very well.
Is there maybe also an aspect of personas where there are people who they have a patch that would essentially apply upstream, but for whatever reason they want to get it into Ubuntu now because of nice.
Or we just make it really easy to submit patches to anything using a common infrastructure and finding how to do it upstream is hard.
And personally, most of the things I've changed have been in the around when then started adding. Perhaps it splits that way as far as the kind of review that we want, or do you have any sense of the proportion of things going into those types for the new contributors especially?
Yeah, I think they're definitely different. Like we're working on packaging and doing some patches, even though there is overlap. We do bits of both.
Can you speak up?
Sorry about that. Some of the there are some people sitting toward the back who are speaking, and so we turn around to talk to them, and then it gets quieter for the microphones. So I'm speaking to you, but I'm not looking at you.
So to go back to the fundamental problem you referred to before, Matt, someone comes up with a contribution and say, yeah, that's really nice, can you send it to Debian or send it upstream? Maybe we should look at breaking these two things, like having a contribution that's acceptable to us and sending it upstream into two separate things, and say to the person, that's great, we'll apply your change and we'd really love it if you can now take it forward and get it into Debian as well, so that it's not an outstanding.
Yes, I think we need to start by defining what kind of contributions we're actually willing to accept and or want to encourage, and we should communicate that to people right up front so that they come in, knowing I'm going to make this and this is wanted by the.
Right. So you can get the right sort of contact straight up is what you're talking about, and I'm also saying, can we perhaps change what we do when we get contact that's not quite right, so that it's not a negative interaction and is instead at worst neutral. But ideally,
it sounds like a common theme throughout this is setting expectations. Like, what kind of work we'd like to see in Ubuntu, evaluating the kind of people who are interested in packaging and making sure that the experience is tailored to their needs, and ensuring that there's a consistent set of processes that are well defined, so people know what to do, so they don't say, what do I do on this step, and they've got 5 different rows they can walk down. And making sure that the tools work to their expectations as well. It seems like those are the kind of the recurring themes. Because talking about the personas, for example, something I've been discovering in the last cycle is we're getting more and more ISVs who are interested in participating in Ubuntu. They want to make their packages available. But they have a very different set of needs. They don't want to necessarily work on a number of different packages in Ubuntu. They want to work on their primary package and its set of dependencies. And they work in an environment that's driven by portability across multiple Linux distributions. So their needs and their perspectives are not very well met because we've traditionally targeted people like us. So maybe those are I'm just trying to think of a way in which there's so much detail flowing around the room. I'm just trying to think of the best way in which we can capture it into buckets that we can then break down and flesh out.
Is there any way that we can? I kind of like idiot-proof stuff. Like, I think we have identified that we do certain things in certain ways, but there's a lot of ways to do it, like John was saying. If we could have this is the way to do it. I mean, I know like BZR, you can easily use the send to generate you the diff that you send upstream, which is great. But there's 100 different ways to do it. And we've got a process that says send your changes upstream or to Debian or whatever the case is, but people don't know how they do that. And I think if we can have just one way of doing things, I know the guys will know a lot of other ways, but if there's one set way that is a standard uniform way that everyone can use, I think that would help a lot. Also for training and
just to build on that, I wonder, I wonder if it's possible to take a really next right approach where people put up a merge proposal which is just against the Ubuntu package and just following one course, as you say. And then if it is something that goes up to Ubuntu, is that something that something that goes up to Debian, is that something a more experienced Ubuntu developer could take care of doing, or would that put too much of a burden on the central Ubuntu developers?
It doesn't scale very well.
And also, if I write the patch and expect Matt to send it to Debian, he's going to have a conversation about something that I did, and if they have questions, we're going to...
Some of it won't apply to Debian as well, but if there was a way that we all use the same method and the same method of removing what doesn't apply from a patch, so maybe it's a discussion around Launchpad and Bazaar. But I'd like one way essentially to do it. I think it would help a lot.
So it's reminding me of a situation that we've encountered in Bazaar, which is that people will do one step that they consider the only important step. We consider another step important, which is writing the tests to ensure that it doesn't break in the future. But they've tested it interactively, so they know their fix works, and that's all they care about. And I can imagine similarly people might not care about Debian at all, and would say, well, okay, if you don't want it in Ubuntu unless I put it in Debian, then, I give up. Because that's the sort of thing that we've had happen with tests.
I think we've seen people who are putting their first toe in the water and they're like, I fix this, I know my fix is good. And they might in theory know the type of testing, but really to them it's like, I fixed it, why don't you just take my fix?
Okay. So we're getting some notes in the Gobby document. So we're going to be covering the overview in another session.
Yeah. I like the approach of having a look at different roles and personas, because you think about what do these people want to achieve, what do they want to do, and it should put us in a position where we can make a shopping list of stuff that we want to have a second look at, and afterwards we can easily say, okay, if you want to do this, this is stuff you might be interested in. If it's just a bunch of links to other documents, it will make it much more discoverable for them afterwards.
And we can also see commonalities between the roles. Like if we identify the key roles, and then we break the process down for each of the roles, a lot of the things will be very common. Like you have to use the Debian packaging system as an example, but in different ways. Like what are the commonalities and what are the differences between the expectations in each of those roles? Because the ones that are common, we're going to have to be very careful about how we, for example, document them, because people are going to be reading them from different perspectives, whereas we can target some documentation examples to different people. So that might be an interesting thing for us to do. So do you think this is something the design team do all the time, which has brought some value to the community, is they really delve into personas a lot. And maybe we don't traditionally do that.
Yeah. This is a design exercise. Yeah. And it should be a user-centered design exercise.
Yeah. So do you think we should maybe focus on that in this session and break that into the common roles and then start delving in? Maybe we can do it on a...
I think maybe we should do that in Gobby, but we can't say if you're in the persona of a person whose patch needs to go onto Ubuntu, that's not a reasonable way to define it, because that person won't.
But I mean, anything, if you patch something, whatever we're using should generate an upstream diff or Debian diff and say, if you are submitting upstream and would like to do so, this is it. I mean, it's done for you, send it off. And if we automate that, or they can choose then to send it or whatever. But I think we get that information anyway.
So which process do we want to look at first? Do we want to consider... It seems like within the sphere of development work, you could be fixing bugs, you could be packaging new applications, you could be packaging new versions of an existing source package. Do we want to pick out the personas and then look at each of these different things, do you think? Like, do we want to look at how would you fix the bug if you're an ISV, or what do you think? Just think of the best way to structure this.
Personally, the way I do it is I'd look at it I'd look at it on a use case, like the actual use case by use case basis, and look at what's actually motivating whoever it is that's doing it, and then from that extract personas.
So pick a use case. We'll maybe just start with a use case.
Yeah, like fixing bugs.
Fixing the bug is probably a good use case. So do we?
I think there's levels of involvement there as well, because some contributors will just submit a patch. It's not dev diff or anything, it's just a patch. So I mean that's one use case, and then someone has to actually turn that into a patch for a dev file.
Also, inside packaging, you have a lot of different options. You can have Debian packaging, Python packaging, Perl packaging, Ruby packaging, plain C packaging, and it's completely different one from the other.
But I think the use case of just an end user submitting a patch, they are not going to worry about that detail, what patch system we're using, whatever. They give us a patch.
Yeah, well, they will just send a patch, and then you need an Ubuntu developer that will turn this patch into actually a Debian patch. That my first contribution was like that. I just sent a patch, plain patch, and then someone took my patch and turned it into a package.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a case that I think already works. It depends. There are some people that just see and say there is a patch, instead of please send a dev diff, and just ignore the report.
Yeah.
There is some other people that take the patch and actually convert it.
I don't think we can expect end users to do dev diffs. I think it's...
Me neither, and I think what we need is for the reviewers to actually take that patch and actually include it in a dev package. But that depends on the reviewer. That's
So one thing that
we can change the policy, maybe the reviewer's policy to say if you find a patch, try to use the patch and actually include it.
Yeah. What I'd like to try and do is give some way to the user, you submitted a patch, thank you very much. This is the process to learn more how to become a developer or move that direction as well. So if they wanted to, it was easily accessible for them to go in that direction, but I don't think we can expect them to go any further. I think it's good enough that they've given a patch and we can look for them.
And we're going to have a separate session about patch review and what we do with those 1,000-something patches that are hanging in Launchpad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess more generally, where is, what is the value chain for patches and where are they stolen?
One of my things is, have we made a decision around? I know James has been doing a lot of work with distributed development stuff in Bazaar, and there's the
What happened?
Who deleted the Gobby doc?
I don't know. I just don't know. Don't blame me.
Control Z.
Is there any?
It's Gobby. Do you think it has undo?
It doesn't have undo.
The new version.
Yeah, but it was the person who made the mistake has to undo it. Hello, internet, fix our Gobby.
Everyone push Control Z.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
there we go.
If an update on the internet asks for it, it will be fixed, right?
Okay, cool. Let's start this back. Sorry to interrupt.
So yeah,
toward the altar and ask for it.
like I would like to.
Oh, ceiling cats.
Kind of, have we made a decision? Is that the way that we want to teach developers to use Bazaar and patching, or do we want to stick to the old system? I think a lot of people or developers they're very familiar with the old system and they're kind of staying there. But I think Bazaar offers numerous benefits. I just think we're not all familiar with how to utilize that best for what we're trying to do.
So I think, in the interest, I think we should focus on a couple of. I think I agree with you. I just think that, just given the time, we should probably pick a use case and go through that, and we'll assume, for example, that we're reviewing maybe a patch as opposed to a merge proposal, and then maybe if we don't have time, we can spin off into talk about. Because I think distributed development is really important. But I'm just conscious of we've got a lot of detail floating around in the room that we'll maybe just look at one use case, so we've got something to start with. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So why don't we do what kind of so we should first probably pick our personas and then apply that to a use case.
Nigel Babu provided a starting list
Okay.
up there somewhere. Sorry, Paulie did. Fixing bugs, packaging new apps, packaging update.
Yeah, those are in the Gobidoc too.
What kind of use personas can we think of? Like,
So you've got and like you've got someone who's an enthusiast who's like using Ubuntu and fixing a bug for the first time.
so a volunteer enthusiast.
Yeah, someone who's fixing a bug for the first time, and like Ubuntu is their contact into the open source world.
You have an upstream developer who may be pretty experienced with the upstream software, but not know much about that impact.
So yeah, like an upstream developer and Ubuntu may not be their primary interest. They just want to deploy their software to Ubuntu. They're there to showcase their upstream.
Someone like that's rarely going to be interested in fixing bugs in Ubuntu itself because they can fix bugs in the code.
Right, but they want to get their fixes into Ubuntu post, please.
One thing that I've heard from the design team about when you define personas is to be really specific in your language. So I just wrote, Ubuntu is probably not their main interest. They're like, Ubuntu is not their main interest, because then it gives you really crisp kind of...
Right.
So I'll make some notes, feel free to delete them and replace them with more sensible prose. So Ubuntu is not their primary focus. Their upstream is.
That might be better defined as saying, their primary focus is the quality of their product on Ubuntu.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and that upstream developer is probably shipping their product on many platforms, and if Ubuntu is the easiest place to ship their product, then they're going to give us more attention, and they'll push all of their customers to us.
So their primary focus, the quality of their
product on Ubuntu.
Of their product on many distributions, of which Ubuntu is one.
Yes.
Ultimate end user, I think the end user might not actually be the enthusiast who comes up with the idea, but also might measure the result. Would that be a persona?
It's a good question. Do you think end users are...
I think that type of end user, the best we're most of the time going to get out of them is they might click OK when that port pops up and asks if it wants to send a bug report in, and they might just cancel. Like the person who's not into open source software at all. Yeah.
So maybe we should focus, because conceivably there's that fuzzy line between where an end user, in terms of their primary use of Ubuntu, stops and where they start getting interested in development.
Yeah.
Which I guess then gets to the outreach kind of sessions. Yeah. So maybe for now we just focus this on people who are going to be doing packaging, and then we can maybe extend that in the outreach sessions.
And I guess we're not. What about Ubuntu developers, Motus, people who are on the warpath to becoming a Motu?
Yeah, I think that's.
So when we say volunteer enthusiasts, do we want to consider that as volunteer Ubuntu developers?
Right, but I mean, like, there's two kinds of cases. Like, you've got people who are already well in the sphere, and people who are kind of coming from being a user to becoming a contributor. Like, that's often a different.
Okay.
So there's people who want to belong to the group, to the team, and there's people who just have a workaround for their problem and want to fix that. Maybe that's a better distinction.
I think that one could kind of overlap with what Rick Spencer called the opportunistic developer. I mean, it's somebody who wants, as a bug, is a developer, can fix it, but is not interesting. He's interested more into the fixes for whatever reason than anything else.
He doesn't want to hang out on ISE or attend a meeting to find out.
Their own problem.
Yeah.
So I've noted two broad personas down as Ubuntu enthusiast new user and Ubuntu enthusiast existing developer, which we may want to split out even further, but it seems to encapsulate those two things. I'd like to put down ISV as well.
Aren't they upstreams?
Yeah, I don't think there's much difference between an ISV and an upstream, except that probably ISVs are less interested by quality.
So it seems like
packaging.
No, I think a single very significant difference is that a lot of ISVs have closed source software, so they're not they're not going to approach it in the same way that someone who's got an open source product is going to, in terms of what they'll consider acceptable solutions.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, from some of the discussions I've had recently with ISVs, they assume, like, when we talk about an upstream developer, we assume that we have code that can be melded into a source package. Whereas for a lot of ISVs, they just want to throw whatever it is over the wall. That might be a set of binaries, it might be...
Well, they've got something that takes them 3 days to produce, and they don't want to spend those 3 days for every different permutation.
Yeah,
so they really want to just...
It seems like the steps in terms of having content ready for a source package is more complicated for many ISVs than for an upstream, where... Yeah. So maybe that's the... It seems like ISVs are a subcategory of upstreams, a type of upstream. Okay, so maybe we can split this into upstream, which is I don't know, I was going to say open source.
I really would start by not putting them as a sub, because you can't send a fix to an ISV. You can to an actual upstream. It's a really different relationship.
No, I'm separating them as two. I'm just saying that they're two different types of upstreams. So if we could think of it as open source upstreams,
sure,
or community upstreams maybe,
sure,
and then ISV upstreams.
Sure, I'd have no qualms with that sort of description.
Okay. Okay, so we can copy these upstream ones. Ubuntu's probably not their primary focus. Their primary focus is the quality of their product. They apply to ISVs as well. So right now we've got Ubuntu Enthusiast as new user, Ubuntu Enthusiast existing developer, upstream community, and upstream ISV. Can we think of any others?
What about an existing user?
Sorry?
An existing user? New user, somebody who's...
Do you mean like an existing developer?
No, a user is somebody who's used Ubuntu for years but never branched into development.
Right.
Wants to do that.
We've only got 20 minutes more, so maybe we should go into some of what these people are, the flowchart for what these people are going to experience.
Do you think it could be interesting to break this group into separate groups? To crowdsource this? Because if we go through each of these one by one, it could take us a while. I'm just wondering whether we should maybe schedule another session and do that, and then basically for each of us to develop flowcharts or something. And what do you think, Daniel? I don't want to derail your session.
The flowchart, I don't know, because we have that separate session already, which is just going to be create this overview for somebody so they understand.
So maybe we could do it. Maybe we could do it in that session.
Yeah.
Maybe we could, because these personas think of valuable ways of looking through the lens.
Definitely, especially if you like create a table for yourself and you, okay, I check this permutation and it's fine. And
when is that session?
I don't know.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday? Because you know what we should do? We should get like a bunch of post-it notes. Because we did that in one of the server sessions at the last UDS that Matt was running, and that was really useful.
But maybe we could take a look at the different use cases. Up until now we have fixing bugs in an existing package, we have package new software, package a new release of an existing package, become uploader for that package or for a set of packages, and help review stuff. Is there anything else you can think of? Like, what do people want to do?
Is there anything? Should there be something about translations here, or is that a separate area? I don't know.
What way?
I don't know.
Okay,
that's the question.
Do you mean someone who's specifically interested in making sure translations are imported?
I guess.
Or translating packaging, like DEFCON translations is the thing.
Yeah, how far do we want to delve into the types of packaging, like library packaging, documentation packaging? Probably not.
No.
That's what I'm
just checking. Like I don't.
Because that, yeah.
It's a question we always ask about Launchpad. Don't forget the translators.
All right, so this is just the line that's going out.
Good.
Yeah,
It's just the Launchpad mantra.
yeah.
So I think that session will be good, like going from the documentation for how do you do this to really considering the process, right? Where is this conversation going to keep going afterwards? Because I'm sure the Launchpad users are people who all really value feedback about how people are experiencing.
What might be interesting is for us to, we've identified these, the set of personas. And what might be interesting for us to agree on now is to figure out what we're going to do to evaluate that persona.
I think what we could do is, now we seem to have a reasonable shopping list, and if in the next session we just think about where do we see potential, like this is something we should do for an ISV when they want to, I don't know, help review. Is there anything interesting there? And we can, I think it should be easy for us to just tick it off and say, okay, there's nothing we can do there, as we don't want to review, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the use cases that just are not going to very neatly fit. Like ISVs probably don't want to fix bugs.
Yeah, there you go.
And also so existing developers probably do want to fix bugs, but conversely, new users are attracted to bugs because it's a good first step, whereas uploading a whole new package is.
I have one question I have is, so it's a meta question to a certain extent, is that when you're doing personas, you want as few personas that you have, and personas are really like real person, or like they have like goals and that sort of stuff. And so this is kind of argued it's more like role in a use case and that kind of stuff. But from a persona perspective, I wonder, so we spoke about the opportunistic developer, which wants to fix problems, so fixing bugs, their problems, and the new user is kind of also the same kind of goal, fixing their problem. So maybe we should just merge the two and not make them necessarily an Ubuntu enthusiast. It's the person who's interested in fixing a problem in Ubuntu, and so yeah, maybe merge the two, or we.
I think it's going to happen during the conversation. If you have a look at a certain use case, you're going to go, okay, we answered this already. Like, it's the same like for one person and for the other. I think that's, you can imagine that it happens naturally.
So maybe what we can do is, I'm just thinking about, like, when we have that session, we want to preferably come out with, in my mind, we want to come out with a set of conclusions for each persona that reasonably represent our experience of working with those personas. And I think things like identifying the opportunities is really good. So, you know, what are you looking for if you fall into that persona? So, for example, if you want to contribute as a developer to Ubuntu, the first thing you want to look for is you want to look for success. You want to be able to, you have this set of tools, you want to be able to engage with them and upload something and think, that's really cool, I did that, you know. But because of that persona, the barrier is going to have to be very low. Whereas for an ISV, your success is, I've deployed my application in Ubuntu. So maybe those overriding things are opportunities, like you say. Maybe challenges, like what challenges does that persona face right now with our existing systems?
Yeah.
Like for a new user, it's really hard to learn packaging. Like for an ISV, our package doesn't necessarily represent the needs. So do you think are you thinking of like maybe identifying those general categories and then producing a set of bullet points for each of those categories, and that can then affect the process?
Yeah, I was thinking of it as a matrix. You have the use cases and you have the personas.
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, it's not interesting. Just strike it through and then go to the next, and then, okay, this is the challenges, this is the opportunities.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we're going to have a to-do list.
Yeah, so we have a matrix, personas, use cases, and we could potentially even just rate, like, the opportunity of how successful they're likely to be in that particular use case.
Yeah.
And then that gives us essentially a to-do list for where we need to fix problems.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think would help if we ask the question, what is the motivation for that persona doing something? Like an end user just might want to fix his bug. So it's probably just one of the questions we want to ask each of the use cases. I mean, what is their motivation for submitting patches or working on Ubuntu, what the case is?
Yes, for example, I can think of a use case that someone just sent a patch because he just wants to fix this particular bug in this particular program for some reason. And then someone reviews the package and says like, please forward that to Debian. But I'm not interested in forward that to Debian. I use Ubuntu. I just want to fix this problem in this program in Ubuntu.
Yep.
And I'm not interested in sending that to Debian. So that's quite a good idea.
So I was just saying, like, in addition to having what you described about the personas and the use cases and looking at the things there, you also actually need to have a clear picture of what the actual workflow is, with what each of the steps are, where they have to hand things off to other people, where they have to wait.
Yep.
Like getting a clear list of those is really important for
my
people like
thinking
me
is,
who approve the tool chain and for people like you who are trying to look at the process.
what I'd like to recommend that we do, again in the interest of really scoping this to the cycle,
Yeah.
because there's so much detail here, is that what we do is when we've identified our personas, we've identified our use cases, we construct that matrix, and then in this cycle we pick a persona and a use case, maybe two of them, and really drill on them in this cycle. So at the end of the cycle we say, we've really improved this particular person, and then what we can do at the next few days is evaluate how that process worked. Because I think otherwise we might make 10% progress in each of these different areas, and together it won't really actually see much of a benefit to Ubuntu.
Yeah.
So I think that might really... We should also invite someone from the design team to join us, like maybe Michael Forrest or something.
So when will we choose this?
Sorry?
When will we choose this?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
When will we make this, like pick which persona?
Oh, when are we going to do this, you say? We've got a session scheduled on Tuesday. It's the development process overview.
Yeah. 12, same time.
I think that matrix is going to be really valuable. I think it'll give us a much firmer idea of... So should we just review these personas again, see if there's anything that we're missing?
Just wondering, how are we going to factor in stuff like, because in the beginning we listed stuff that makes working in Ubuntu as a developer complicated. We said sometimes we're blocked on other people who are waiting. It depends on where we are in the cycle. We have different tools to choose from. Sometimes we're interacting with other projects. It's also stuff we need to keep in mind when we're reviewing each case and each persona.
Yeah.
It seems like that might factor into what you're talking about with the sort of what's the perfect process. Like, you know, when you're talking about removing some choices and things like that, actually defining if I knew everything and I was doing everything absolutely as perfect process-wise as I could, what's that? You know, and then how do we help people
I think what we're
get
doing
there or not do the whole thing?
I think what we're doing is we're identifying a way in which we can frame the problem, so we can understand the problem. Because there's so much. One thing we're discovering here is there's so much detail floating around, lots of different needs, lots of different ways of approaching it, lots of different options. And I think by putting together this matrix, I think what we'll learn a lot of in this cycle is how we really focus on something and identify growth. And as part of that, I think fixing some of the process issues, but also really going out there and advocating to those people as well. So, for example, if we decide we want to focus on
getting new packages in.
Yeah, like getting new packages in.
So I think that's
sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a really important one, because if I look at all of the different types of work we've talked about doing, we want Ubuntu to be the premier place for new software developers, people creating new hotness to come and deliver that, and they're very motivated at that point. Like, I've created something really cool, I want to go ship it somewhere.
Yeah.
If we can make that really sticky and really nice for people to get their new packages into Ubuntu easier than anywhere else, at that point they're going to have users on Ubuntu, and then they're going to have, I think, sufficient motivation to learn all of the rest of the process
Yeah.
of patching and all of that. But I think that getting new applications in, like I want Monty, our Rackspace, to to be able to turn into just as much of an advocate as I am.
Yep.
You'll get every developer at Rackspace excited about any new thing that they write. The first place they ship it is Ubuntu.
I agree with you. I think.
By starting with caring about that one piece, that's a great way to get started. And like you say, we start to care more about the overall experience of Ubuntu, because that's where we really grow.
So if we pick that use case, in terms of which persona, which do you think would be most appropriate? I mean, we could arguably go for the upstream persona, the upstream community and the upstream ISV.
And the existing developer.
And the existing developer.
Probably not so much the new user, but
yeah,
everybody else.
Well, yeah.
Okay, great. So we've only got a few minutes left, so it sounds like we've got a pretty good plan. We've got the personas, we've got the use cases. We'll flesh out the matrix in the session on the Tuesday.
Cool.
And then at that point, we'll then start figuring out exactly what we want to do in this cycle regarding targeting.
So you're probably not going to get like a workflow, an actual workflow overview. That's something that you're going to put as a project for RTDS. Okay.
Yeah, I think what we might want to do as well, given the work, I think we're probably going to want to schedule a third session to take, once we've got that output from the matrix, to take that and then define that into work items for you for the cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll schedule that for maybe the Thursday or the Wednesday.
We lost the remote people.
Oh. Icecast is down. Can someone just log into #canonical-sysadmin on Freenode and just ping them?
So for each case, which questions are we going to ask? Up until now, I listed down what are the challenges, what are opportunities for us to fix something, what drives those people, how is their success defined. We also mentioned like where in the cycle are we, which other people and projects do we depend on?
So it could be opportunities, challenges, how they define success, how they find stuff to work on.
Yeah, I'd like to see where do we, what document or web page or whatever do we expect they will find that gets them started with this, and what kind of thing does that help, which I'm working on.
Where is this documented? Is that the question?
Yeah, where is this document?
Okay.
If it doesn't exist, or if it exists, what's in it?
So it sounds like, yeah.
Perhaps even just what is it now, and what is the science fiction document versus what's there.
So that I could imagine that particular element would probably be potentially rolled into what are their expectations? Like, essentially, what do they need? So maybe we can think, just thinking of overview in terms of that persona, as opposed to specific implementation details. You could have, opportunities, challenges, needs. Like, I need somewhere to learn how to get started. And I think another one is experience. What do they know? What do we expect that person to know? Like a new user, we don't expect them to know really anything other than probably using Ubuntu. At which point we'll need to bring in learning the Debian packaging system. So maybe opportunities, challenges, experience, and needs.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have any input on this? Because I know we're kind of learning from the design team's persona kind of process.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go about it. The most important piece, I think, in this case is just prioritizing specific workflows and then the components of those workflows that are common to multiple of them.
Yeah.
And putting the pressure on there to connect the dots.
Okay, that sounds good. So it sounds like we'll review this on Tuesday, we'll work in the matrix, and then I'll schedule another session for Wednesday or Thursday, and then we can hammer on it.
Like in those personas, we just need to also look at the current process for that persona, what happens, and then we can try and identify how we can improve it.
Yeah.
And those personas, they need names.
Dave.
So persona development takes months if you really want to dive into it. There are a couple of personas that the design team has, at least one of which is a developer, and so start with him or her, and there's someone on the design team once you have the details of that. And for the rest, I would focus on stories rather than adding personas.
Yeah. I think like that identification of how do we achieve this outcome? Like somebody is interested, they have an application they work on. How do they get it into Ubuntu?
where they get it in, how do they get it updated, how do they communicate with us about versions and cadences, how do they promote it to their users, how do they deal with bugs and feedbacks, how do they take patches, those are stories.
When do they see the results of their work?
Yeah.
I think that value stream map is a very good tool for this sort of stuff if you're analysing for efficiency.
How do they get data as to how many people are using it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I think we're a lot of the problem as well as people reviewing and sponsoring. I think if we can fix that up to make that better, then we get people contributing at once and stay around, because if there's a patch and no one looks at it for ever, how long people lose interest.
The progress report that PPIs are great because they give you relatively easy satisfaction that like my software is now working and so with these but people may then have a bit of a barrier to get it fully upstream. Like to include a bit of an attitude for the specific more technical area of design and that there are people around right in the ground in the bottom floor of this building will be here all week. So if you've used source package branches or use Bazaar or you get a bug or you have a wish or solution opportunity, you can go through all those things.
Yeah.
Pomegranate is the room.
Yeah, and if you're talking from the internet, #BZR.
Yeah.
We've also got a health check session which we scheduled on Friday. Lunchtime at 12 at Friday.
Nice.
All right.
Sweet.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot.